So, obviously, I've already posted about burning capes on my main channel, but I want to go deeper into explanation. What I mean by burn the cape could probably differ from some others because I did not create this phrase. I don't like when important advice is seen as a social media trend and not something genuine that should be implemented in real life. So I want to explain what I mean by burn the cape and give examples on how to do that. There was a general sentiment of agreement in the comments section of the video, but I think there was also some misunderstanding. Black women have multiple capes flapping for so many demographics and groups. It's not just one. So I think it's important to acknowledge all capes and burn them all. Otherwise, you haven't really made any difference and you're still not putting yourself first. Some of the content creators I've seen are a lot older, and they've explained they have a history of being political or male-worshipping mammies, pick-me's, and the likes. Some of these women have children. Some of these women have shared their personal and professional horror stories and explained how they dealt with it. So they have a long history of being heavily invested in some form of being a mammy. And it's not just about the black race. It's a good thing they've shared this content and gave warnings. And some are still giving warnings. Unfortunately, other type of content seem to be in a standstill. Now you don't have to tell them to change their content, because they can do whatever they want and it can still be useful to those who are just now hearing those warnings. But if you've personally gotten the message, then it's important to move on. I'm sure some of the repetitive content is because of decades of doing the same thing, and they suddenly don't want to change because change is very difficult for people. In times of stress or just for any good reason, most people revert back to doing what's comfortable to them and what they're used to. In terms of race and politics, a lot of them probably are from the civil rights era or had a parent from that era, and because of race and promises of building a black utopia, they are still very much wanting to give their energy to that community and try to fix it, even though there's nothing fixable and they've been repeatedly talking about fixing their community since forever. So, this is nothing new. There's archives dating back 50 years with the exact same talking points you are now hearing online. If you're Gen Z, you're very young, and yes, you probably also have a history of doing the same thing as most older black women, but obviously you have less experience doing it. So it should be easier for you to burn your capes and heed their warnings so you won't repeat their mistakes. The older you get, the more set in your ways you are. The faster you burn the cape, the sooner you can get your future on track and not run yourself into the ground and ruin your life. A lesson you can learn from other people is not repeating their bad history and not getting comfortable doing the same thing. Do not use good life advice as a social media trend to just engage in, like some post, and then keep scrolling without being proactive in changing your life for the better. You don't want to flap a cape for literally anyone. Most of the comments in my video were talking about males, but I want to paint this bigger picture because that's just low-hanging fruit at this point. I don't believe in just sitting up complaining without enacting some type of solution and then moving on from the problem. It's better to unsubscribe from content creators that have acknowledged a problem, but then don't want to move on past that acknowledgement stage. I don't mean never talking about issues again, but I mean taking steps in their own life to actually implement the solutions they're talking about. I have never been invested in the way I know most black girls have, so the concept of being a mammy is very bizarre to me, and I think if you're listening to a previous mammy or a cape flapper that only burnt one cape, while still flapping the rest, you're probably not fully getting the right message. I take things very seriously when it comes to getting rid of problems or burdens out of my life, and I feel like some other black women I've seen talking about this are kind of walking on eggshells or with no sense of urgency. They kind of teeter back and forth, or what some people would correctly call fence sitting, and every now and then you see a cape flapping. And that's what happens when you're not really doing anything to burn the cape, but just talking about it. I'm pretty sure most Gen Z black girls don't have children, so you're probably engaged somewhat in conversations with people constantly talking about single mothers if your mother was single raising you. But you're probably not a single mother yourself. This is another conversation you don't need to be consistently engaging in. Burning the cape. You need to be very aware of what's going on around you and question narratives you were taught growing up and even still seeing today. The vast majority of black girls, and I mean at least 99%, don't know their real history and don't question what people are saying to them. Maybe because you think they have authority, they're using big words so you think they're intelligent, or society is trying to convince you that person's opinion is valid and should be listened to. But questioning everything means even something that sounds good or complimentary to you Don't ignore problems and let things slide, and always look out for what someone's motives are, because everyone has a motive they won't admit to. Now, when I say stop caring, I don't mean about everything, but don't bother yourself with things outside of your control. I'm very annoyed by seeing girls close to my age on TikTok talking about situations like the Congo or Starbucks boycotts, when there's life and death situations going on in their own life they haven't bothered to acknowledge. Stop caring about other people's business and focus on yourself. You can empathize without really caring, and it's going to be very hard for a lot of Black girls to learn how to be selfish, but it's life-changing in a good way to be focused on you. Again, I'm saying this for you to actually take steps in doing this, not to just nod your head along and then go back to doing the same things offline. Watching repetitive and negative content all the time online is not going to help you in any aspects of your life. You can still use it to stay somewhat informed, but you don't want to get looped into a stage on not moving on, and you can't hang back with people who don't really plan on moving on at all. A lot of intelligent Black women have already touched on the Harvard president resigning and explained their thoughts on this. And this is just a perfect example of you as a mammy versus the rest of society. As a Black woman, you have to be aware you don't have a real community or life support like everyone else, and you are essentially operating as an individual. Especially when it comes to your income. Society is going to be very unfair because you will still be held accountable for the behavior of demographics you belong to, or be subject to whatever hate people have for said demographic, and there's nothing you can do to change that. That's why you move smart. Flapping a cape and mammying is not smart. Supporting the people who will use you because of your demographic and trying to wield you as a shield is not smart. When you're involved in the issues and concerns of others, you lose automatically. You lose financially, and you allow others to use you as a pawn, then you also lose socially. To be fair, the demographic has lost socially since at least the 1400s, and it's just inherent, but still, you get my point. Do not advocate for the interest of other people, no matter how much you genuinely want to support them. Now, take note that the multitude of groups that this Black woman supported her entire life, not one of them will genuinely support her now outside of empty oh no's. No one is going to ride for her the way she was willing to ride for all of them endlessly. She probably hasn't learned that lesson, and she's probably still supporting them. If people can't get you to advocate for them, they'll try to join you to snatch your advocacy by proximity. Do not allow other groups to merge themselves with you in any type of way. Again, you should be mentally operating as an individual, not a part of a group, no matter how many times they'll lie to you and tell you otherwise. Remember, everyone's talking about the Congo, climate change, or males wearing dresses, not the rampant abuse and endless issues your own demographic faces. If you're a lesbian or something a part of that alphabet group, you need to be understanding that no one really cares about that. And you should advocate for yourself as a Black woman, not as a lesbian. No one can look at you and see who you sleep with, but they can see your race and gender, and it's extremely disrespectful to your foremothers to allow other people in that group to compare themselves not only to Black women, but the discrimination and historical hatred and suffering that went on. If you're speaking on an issue or experience you or another Black woman faced, and a person the same race, gender, nationality, or income level says they have the same problems. Even if they do have the same problems, that's for them to deal with, not you. But the goal is to not only center themselves in your conversation, but to put themselves in a position to benefit the most from the labor you're about to embark on to deal with said problem. And as always, you would not only benefit the least, but it would also be weaponized against you and saved as a later tool to attack you. So, you did the most work, and you benefit the least. This is the recurring pattern for Black women flapping capes and falling into becoming a mammy. A lot of Black women miss the point when it comes to burning the cape because they do it not in terms of self-love and preservation, but just reactionary and in retaliation to people not giving them what they want. Yes, that's one of the reasons, but not the main reason. It's just common sense and natural to put yourself first. If you've been caping for males, protecting and providing for them, or trying to fight a white male police officer on their behalf, you shouldn't have been doing that to begin with. You're a woman, and it's not your job to protect a male or sustain them financially. So, if you're only burning the cape in the sense that your masculina Wakanda warrior behavior wasn't rewarded, you're essentially just saying you see no problem being a mammy and disrespected, but only if someone gives you a pat on the head in return. Absolutely not. Again, you shouldn't have been doing it to begin with. Black women getting outraged on behalf of rappers with wives who refer to them either as racial slurs or terms like dark meat. Why do you care, Black women? Why are you more outraged on someone's behalf than they are? It's really not that hard to mind the business that pays you. A young Black girl in the UK was unfortunately unalived after getting involved in her friend's business. Her friend was dating a minor terrorist, and during an altercation, the terrorist took the Black girl's life while she jumped in front of her friend. Another example for young girls, a story recently went viral along with a video of a non-Black Muslim girl getting bullied by an older white female student. A Black girl decides to step in and involve herself, fighting the white bully, and the principal decides the Black girl is an aggressor, should be suspended and expelled. Now, only because the story went viral and people wanted to cheer on the mammying superhero antics and the adultification of a Black girl, she ended up not getting expelled. My point still stands. Let people defend themselves and don't instill cape flapping into younger Black girls. Now, I feel like this has to be said for Black women who like to take things to the opposite extreme. Diamond and Silk, two Black Republican women who got popular only because they are Black and essentially behaved like minstrel show characters. If they were white women, Trump would have never brought them on that stage and given them notoriety. Why? Because the purpose is not to support Diamond and Silk, but to use the identity of Black women. This is a very obvious, tired, and cringy thing for right-wing people to do. Look, I have a Black friend and they agree with me. It's not a problem if these women are just Republican because they just want lower taxes or something, but why are they brought on stage being shown off like toy poodles? Just as a side note, and this is just something I recently noticed, but Silk, along with other popular Republican women, have recently been very supportive of sexual predators. One of them specifically targeting Black girls, and they've been advocating for these males to be released from prison. So if you think Republicans are the savior of Black girls surrounded by criminals in their community just because they say law and order, think again. Interesting. But I just had to point that out, that what I am explaining is not one-sided, and this cape flapping, especially the male-worshipping capes, is not all the most obvious and typical liberal pro-Black mammy that everyone is so used to seeing. Again, with these Black women, who are more rare if you see one of them is married to a white male, and she starts wearing ridiculous shirts about wanting to save or help the white race. This literally is the sister of Black women marching in the streets, wanting to fight not only on behalf of a race but a male. And in this case, it's a race they're not even a part of. It's simply peak mammyism, and why when you burn the cape, you burn all the capes in any urge you have to flap one again. Ask yourself why any Black woman is trying to normalize defending and protecting grown males, perfectly capable of defending themselves, and why any Black woman would want to marry a testosterone-deficient male because he wants to hide behind her skirt like a child. White males are perfectly capable of defending themselves. They don't need your help. If they do need help, last time I checked, white women were still alive, and who better to help them than their own mammies and mothers? So, there's a million more examples and explanations I can give about burning capes. I want Black women to be a bit like me, just very cold-blooded and not really caring about others. This sounds very bizarre to a lot of Black women, but it is what it is. It's not for everyone to get. When you're inclusive and trying to be nice and welcoming to people, you'll fail every time. You're just being a people pleaser and serving yourself and your labor on a plate for others to benefit from like a slave is nothing to be proud of. You especially should have an issue with that as a Black woman. So I have a couple new videos planned. 2024 is here and it's a very important year. There's a lot of important things that need to be focused on. I created a financial guide I'll be posting soon, and another important guide I want to share. It's a list of very specific commandments to live by that helps you prioritize yourself and work on genuine self-love. Really, I think it'll break down some of the brainwashing in a lot of Black girls, and some of it is just general good life advice you probably did not get from your family, community, or the content you're seeing online. I already shared my thoughts on our demographic being an academia, and I will follow up with more detailed information about which paths younger Black girls should go to when transitioning from high school to adulthood. I am an older Gen Z, and I've already